Alright, welcome to the letter. We're going to continue where we left off, the beginning of Chapter 5, Rebecca's chapter. Sadly, we've lost Mary Ann in her attempt to face up to all the things she's denied about her past. She wound up taking her own life, trying to be with the person that she had left behind. So here's Rebecca. She currently has a plus with Ashton, and I suspect that's because we, as Isabella, at one point in time backed out of a movie, leaving the two of them together. So let's take a look at her profile. Rebecca. Notice everybody else is still grayed out. Rebecca Gales. April 1st, Aries, 29 years old. She's not the youngest, but she's close. She's 5'5", a history teacher, Scottish. She's an atheist. She has her master's in education and majored in European history. She loves stovies, reading in the library, going to the gym, cycling and jogging, lacrosse, and lesson plans. So we know all of that is a big dirty lie. Nobody likes doing lesson plans. Although of Scottish descent, she grew up in Luxburn and even went to school at St. Goretti, which is where she teaches. Her parents were professors of European history and Southeast Asian history at Luxburn University. They were often busy, and that forced Rebecca to be independent early on. Surrounded by books and instilled with a love of learning, she was a star pupil and often called a teacher's pet for it. Her passion for academics, leading to a career in the industry, was to be expected of her. She came out of her shell in her high school years, started becoming the Spitfire she is now. Before then, Ashton was her only friend, though she found him aggravating at first, so they went to school together. Okay. Independent and used to taking care of others, it was no surprise when she helped out the young foreigner who moves in next door, and that is Isabella. This is how it begins, or so they say. With a gentle wind drifting through wide-open windows, muffled laughters, and footsteps fading behind empty hallways in the light kiss of the afternoon sun. Soon there will be a call, a crossing of thresholds into the unknown. Maybe we're off to some grand adventure, or diving into another gripping mystery. One can't really tell. For all I know, a hero might even come to sweep me off my feet, if I'm lucky.
That's not exactly a bad thing when you think about it.
No, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But this is far from the one, isn't it? A riveting tale, that is. A mild breeze, the faint murmurs, the warm rays painting every nook and cranny of a fiery hue. They're all as real as they can get. As much as I want to write a little tale out of this, I'm far from someone who can. Fleeting fancies, that's what these are. Merely passing thoughts to occupy an idle mind while waiting for another busy workday to end. Then again, in another life, I am one? Who knows? But at present, what I have, and what I've chosen to be, well,
I won't last years here if I find teaching rowdy adolescents a tedious job, will I?
admittedly, the whole affair isn't exactly as grand or exciting as I imagined as a child. If I weren't so stubborn and too passionate about the whole idea, I probably would have quit a long time ago. But it's always the kids that make it worthwhile, isn't it? As if in agreement, as soon as my pen slides into a neat circle against the paper I'm grading, the final bell rings. Like a dam that is opened, students begin piling out into the hallway soon after. For a short minute, I let the noise fill my ears, let my mind wander to a place far removed from all the hubbub. Solitary moments like this have come few and far between lately. Even my own home hasn't been as quiet as I usually prefer. Though in hindsight, the entire place hasn't been the same either since Isabella moved in next door. And if her fussing over a minor cold last week tells anything, I might as well throw any idea of solitude out the nearest balcony so long as she lives nearby. At the memory, my eyes automatically shift over to the bottle sitting at the edge of my desk. A chuckle escapes me as I reach for
A
it.
little ball of energy and enthusiasm. That big baby.
Mother Hen, she calls me. And then she says and does the same thing right after. It's not that I'm unused to being on the end of receiving other people's worries, or I feel any sort of apprehension over her fretting. If I'm to be completely honest, it's actually amusing how someone can be so childlike one minute, and then act like a responsible adult the next. But there's a dissonance there, both in her actions and words. Although she may not look like it, may not say anything, may not lose her cheer, one way or another I know these troubles have weighted her down lately. Her face says it all. That big numpty. If she thinks I won't notice, she's got another thing coming for her. That's how she's always been. I do understand that part, loud and clear. It's just... I'd really rather not pass another burden on to her.
Or become one myself.
Aren't I supposed to be the one taking care of them? Though I guess that's simply one of those things people eventually grow away from, once you've all started leading different lives. Not completely different, I hope. Somehow that thought makes me feel uneasy. Thankfully, before stranger ideas can take root in my head, a faint buzzing comes from my bag, cutting through the rest of my thoughts. A small frown forms on my lips when the screen lights up and an unknown number flashes. For a long second, my thumb hovers over the answer button. Even the voice that responds once I do accept the call is wholly unfamiliar.
Hello?
Oh, goodness. Finally, it connects. Hello? Is this Miss Gales? Rebecca Gales?
Yes, speaking. Who is this?
Oh, sorry. Rose Cooper. Briar Realty Corporation.
Briar Realty?
My frown deepens as I straighten from my chair. Something in her tone, despite sounding remarkably friendly and light, doesn't sit quite well with me. The rigid pause that follows doesn't help ease the tension.
Miss Cooper?
Yes. Things are a bit busy on my end. I apologize. I'm not certain if Isabella has mentioned anything before, but we're working together on a property at the moment, and...
The Armengard Mansion, yes. She said something about that earlier. Is there a problem?
This is about Isabella, actually.
She wastes no time relaying everything. The details she provided are, admittedly, a bit vague, but enough for me to get a gist of what happened. The music sounds really loud to me, you guys. But it's still me that's pretty high. Alright. Let's make a quick modification here. We will mic down just a little bit, minus 6 decibels. We'll pop back over. Let's make sure it doesn't change in perspective. That happens sometimes. There we go. It isn't the bad sort I'm expecting, though still worrying, especially when words like panic attack and pale, looking a bit sickly, are woven together in one foreboding sentence. But as quickly as it surfaces, I stomp down on the urge to demand answers right there and then. Now isn't the proper time for useless questions. I'll find out soon enough, regardless. To Miss Cooper's credit, she neither hesitates nor falters all throughout. There's some sort of comfort in knowing Isabella has someone like her to guide her, though it's not as much as I would have liked. After all, this is Isabella we're talking about. What are the chances she just said a bunch of excuses so she won't get sent home? High. Very high. Oh, she's so gonna hear it this time.
You were listed as one of her emergency contacts, so I thought it'd be best you know about this.
How is she? Is she doing okay?
I had her take a break for now, but honestly, I'd feel better if someone were to pick her up and take her home for some rest. Anthem's a fair distance from Luxborn. I really don't want her going off on her own. I'd do it myself, but oh, you know how it is today. Big day. People everywhere until the open house ends. I'm really sorry to ask this of you, Miss Gales. I know you're busy.
Oh, no, it's all good. I was just about to leave from work. I hope to leave early today anyway. A few minutes ahead wouldn't hurt. I can be there in a few, 30, 40 minutes tops. Is that all right?
More than fine, Miss Gales, thank you. We're supposed to be here until... Oh, excuse me. One moment, please. Yes, ma'am.
The faint hum of conversation echoes from her end. Sounds as though the place is buzzing with more people than you'd expect from a regular open house. I was skeptical at first. The house is old, not to mention in an inconvenient location on Luxburn's outskirts. Who wants to live in a place almost an hour's drive away from the comforts of the city? But from what little I can hear, it appears Isabella has every right to be optimistic about the sale. If I didn't understand why she was so adamant in refusing my offer of help before, I think I do now. To some degree.
We'll be resuming the tour soon. Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. I really need to get this thing going. Lord knows how I'll salvage the situation here. It shouldn't be anything complicated, but still, clients. It can be difficult when they want to be. Anyway, just look for me when you get here, alright? I shouldn't be too hard to miss.
No problem. Thanks for letting me know about this. Just make sure Isabella stays put, please. Heaven knows how stubborn that girl can be.
Oh, believe me, I know. Don't worry about it. I'll have a few of our staff keep an eye on her for me until you get here.
That's all I'm asking. I appreciate it.
The whole thing ends on a surprisingly pleasant note. If only the same can be said for the news she brought. I allow a brief minute to pass to ease whatever tension has latched itself firmly onto my nerves, but no matter how much I wish for it, my mind stubbornly refuses to do so. My hands are unsteady against the papers I pretend to arrange. Lucid thoughts, every single ounce of it grimmer than the other, grows with each passing second I linger. Something about this whole thing, along with the sudden unease and nagging worry, screams, off. Wrong. This isn't the riveting tale I'd hoped to step into today. Even on a rush, getting everything in order before leaving takes nearly a good quarter hour. By the time I make it out of the classroom, the commotion's already died down, dwindling to mere echoes and distant laughter. From the nearby room, melodies of a rehearsing band drift freely into the air, filling the almost empty hallway with their warm, lively tunes. Any other day, I'd stop and bask in the music and enjoy what little peace it brings. But not today. My steps are brisk as I march to Edward Hall's exit. The sooner I confirm Isabella's okay, the sooner I can shake off this niggling feeling. For one reason or another, that call, of all possible things, has thrown everything off kilter. I'd rather this be over with as quickly as possible. So much that I nearly barrel over a student in my haste. Though, perhaps it's really the other way around. When I look down, a set of eyes, bright and hopeful, stare back at me. Her arms are wrapped around my waist like a vise, and at my attention a grin spreads across her face. Buenas tardes, Miss Pink.
Hello, Kylie. You know, you aren't supposed to run into people like that.
Sorry, Miss Pink. She loosens her hold on me, and not a hint of guilt or regret appears on her. Interesting, because I know Kylie was voiced earlier. If anything, it seems the remark has only amused her. A smile appears on my face before I can help it, matching the one on her own.
Just remember not to do it again, all right? You could get hurt.
You sound like my mama when she's scolding Rowan, Miss Pink.
See? I don't know.
I'm sure your mama only means well. I know she'll be worried sick if one of you were to get hurt. Where's your brother anyway? aren't you two supposed to be heading home now?
Rowan said he's got some stuff he needs to do before we go. I think he's taking too long. But he promised to buy me jelly babies today if I keep what he's doing a secret from Mama and Papa.
Wow. Jelly babies.
Any chance you'll tell Miss Pink about it?
She shakes her head, both of her hands going to her mouth as if to keep a precious secret from spilling out.
I made a promise.
Yeah, well, we're not Mama or Papa, so you can tell us.
He said it's for Tio Luke.
Oh, Tio Luke. So, okay.
Oh, something like a gift?
Like a deal. Tio promised to take him somewhere cool when he's old enough. Rowan's gonna prove he's a grown-up.
Laughter slips free from my lips. The teacher in me wants to give whoever this Tio is a reprimand for bringing about this kind of behavior in children, but if both Suarez kids are so fond of him, there shouldn't be anything to worry about then, yes? At any rate, they're nothing but well-behaved, both Kylie and her brother. Rowan, the eldest, may have an occasional odd streak in and out of class, but their parents have taught them well. I see no reason to cast any suspicion of bad behavior on them.
As long as it isn't anything dangerous, all right?
It's not. Cross my heart. My drawings are a lot prettier than what he's doing anyway. Tio said so. Do you want to see? I drew one earlier at class.
Is that why you're here?
Not really. I was gonna show it to my friend first. But since it's you, I'm sure she wouldn't mind if you see it before she does.
Oh no. I can't stay right now, Kylie.
Her face falls immediately after the words are out. A small part of me feels responsible for that crestfallen look, but as much as I want to stay a little longer, there's another place I need to be at right now. And frankly, another child to look after. Taking both of her hands, I kneel in front of her and muster the most rueful smile I can give. At her age, I'm sure she already understands what I'm about to say before they're even out. But remarkably, she doesn't look away or pout as I'm expecting her to.
I'm sorry. You know what? Rowan has a class with me on Monday around this time. Why don't you drop by again next week? After class? I'll even make sure to wait for you. It's just that I absolutely must leave now. My friend had an accident earlier, and I'm the only one she has here.
What about her mama and papa?
Her family lives really far from here, I'm afraid. Do you remember where Asia is? The southeast part? That's where they are.
Her eyes immediately light up in my question. Just like that, I know that I've earned her forgiveness.
Oh, just like Takako.
Who?
My friend. She said she used to live there, only just a little higher than southeast. But she hasn't come home in a long time, so she doesn't remember much about it anymore. Melody says it's weird I talked to her, but I think she's just shy. They could be good friends too. Don't you think so, Miss Pink?
Maybe if you introduce them properly, they will be.
That's what I think. Takako's just lonely. If she makes more friends, she won't be anymore. Is your friend like that too?
A little, possibly. To be honest, sometimes I can't tell with her.
After all, Isabella's always been the kind to hold a smile, even when things have taken a turn for the worse. 5 years, and one would think it's enough time to know a person, but when you consider it, come to think of it, all these years I've never, not even once, seen her cry. Not over a trivial matter or when things are tough.
Okay, you can go to her. I'll just show you my drawing next time.
Thank you. Remind me to buy you a huge glass of parfait, all right?
Oh, Lord.
No, I'll get a stomachache. Takako says so. A small one is okay.
I'll remember that. Say hi to your friend for me.
I will. I'm sure she'd love to meet you too. See you, Miss Pink.
I'll see you later, Kylie.
London Bridge is falling down.
She doesn't look back or wait
falling
for any
down,
sort of
falling
goodbye
down.
from me, and with a
London
song
Bridge
and an
is
extra spring
falling
in her
down.
steps, she bounds
Bye
across the
there,
corridor with as
lady.
much spirit as only a child her age can have. As if the conversation had never taken any downhill turn for her at all. As if there isn't a single thing to worry about in the world. Not long afterwards, she disappears behind a door, leaving behind strains of an old, familiar rhyme lingering in the air. Carefree, unbidden, untroubled moments like this, I envy her. And as I resume my hurried pace, a tiny whisper at the back of my mind wishes the same could be said of myself and my own worries. Luxburn may be a small city, but it's no stranger to hellish rush-hour traffic. But surprisingly, getting out of the city today proves more of a breeze than a hassle. A relief, considering how none of my calls to Isabella have made it through. Either the reception's really bad out there, or she's ignoring them on purpose. Both does nothing to ease the disquiet in me. The rest of my drive passes without much incident as soon as I'm out of the busy streets. In less than 30 minutes, the mansion looms ahead of me. For all the fuss Isabella made about the house, it remains a thing of beauty. Unlike Luxburn, the estate and the nearby Anselm village stand as a complete opposite, living and breathing the songs of old, whispers of a once booming haven lingering in the air. Contemporary conveniences aside, it's a place I'm glad modernization hasn't wholly touched.
It's just a shame the locals know more of the silly hearsay than the history itself. If I could only knock some sense into these people!
Sadly, complaining's all I can afford to do. As much as I want to give them a piece of my mind, it's not why I'm here. I don't think these rich types will appreciate getting a lecture from me either. I have as much business with them as they have with me. With a heavy sigh, I give myself one last second to take in the scenery before heading up to the main entrance. Most of the guests are already heading out. Though some still linger, it's mainly just to take photos of the house's facade or its various rooms. I pause for a moment, scanning the small crowd gathered at the foyer, looking for any sign of that familiar ponytail among the sea of hats and heads.
No sign of her.
No sign of the other staff or Miss Cooper, either. I can certainly look for Isabella on my own, but in a place this big? I'd be lucky if I didn't end up lost or find her before we need to meet with Zachary and Ash tonight. Sighing, I reach for my mobile and redial her number. The gesture, familiar now after so many attempts to reach her earlier. If she doesn't answer, I can still try contacting Miss Cooper. I just hope the network reception will cooperate this time. This side of the county has never been popular with the tech-savvy, after all. To my relief, it only took 3 unsuccessful tries. At the 4th one, right as it's about to switch to another intercept message, the line finally rings. Silence follows while I wait for her to pick up. By now, most of the visitors have already cleared out. All I have for company are the faint murmurs and an eerie calmness left in their wake. A sudden hush settles, and it gives way to noises louder than they're ever meant to be. Doors creaking, slamming shut in some distant part of the mansion, floorboards groaning under the sheer weight of the house's history. In the now empty hall, they all reverberate with special clarity against the walls. Like this, those old stories seem to almost have a ring of truth to it. I don't get to stray too far into that ugly line of thought, however. Not a second later, a click sounds from the other end.
Hello? Isabella? Miss Cooper called earlier and... Isabella? Belle? Are you alright?
Without any warning, the call gets cut off. Busy notes blare sharply against the heavy silence, but above the noise cutting through the mute air remains the faint cries of a woman from beyond the foyer. My hand falls to my side as I cast a wary look around, waiting for someone to come running. Surely I can't be the only one here hearing this. There must still be some staff hanging around, checking things out. But no one does. Not even when her sobs turn more frantic and anguished.
Excuse me? Hello? Who's there? Isabella? Isabella? Is that you?
No answer. Growing anxious, I go over to where her cries come from, each step slow and cautious towards a door on the other end of the room. While I'm far from someone who readily gives in to fear or stories lacking factual basis, the vague, restless feeling I had earlier immediately returns to me. And despite myself, my heart begins to race and my breathing quickens.
Belle? Belle, it's me. Miss Cooper called. Is everything okay?
Abruptly, all of it stops. My whole body tenses, mouth dragging in a ragged breath, ears straining for any other sound yet to come from the other side. But nothing follows. Instead, the quiet only lends itself to the heavy tension in the air, as if every small movement will disturb the fragile stillness hanging in the room. I wait for another second. Then with caution, I reach for the knob. My fingers barely graze the brass handle when a hand falls on my shoulder.
Excuse me. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to startle you.
No, it's
Still reeling, my gaze shifts back to the door, as if any second now the cries will start again and whoever's inside will burst out of the room. But I don't get to dwell on these. The woman's worried voice breaks through the haze in my mind again, oddly soothing in the thick of my unease. Even if the concerned look comes from a total stranger, finally being in the company of someone else is somehow comforting.
Ma'am? Are you okay?
Oh, no, I'm fine. This is probably just some cold.
Do you need to sit down?
No need. I'm actually looking for a friend.
I wave the mobile in front of her, like the gesture alone explains everything. Vaguely, I note my tight grip on it and quickly slip it into my pocket before she notices. She doesn't need to know.
Well, I'm not really sure if your friend would still be here. We're actually about to close the open house in a few minutes, ma'am.
No worries. She's not a guest here. She works for Briar Realty. Miss Cooper called me earlier. In fact, I'm also looking for her.
Recognition flashes in her eyes, and her worried expression dissolves into a smile at once. It's all I need to know that I don't have to look elsewhere or venture deeper into the mansion on my own. In some way, I'm not too keen on the latter right now.
Oh, Miss Rebecca Gales, is it?
Yes. Sorry if I'm a bit late.
It's not a problem. I was busy with the open house and a few clients anyway. It's actually a good thing you came when you did. Let's see. Isabella should be here somewhere. I told her to stay put earlier. Girl never listen.
Rose? Rosie? May I have a minute? There's just this one little thing before we go.
Miss Cooper's head immediately snaps up at the voice. In a blink, a different kind of smile spreads on her face. A smile still, friendly even, but the kind given mainly for the sake of pleasing other people rather than making friends.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be there in a few.
It's an impressive thing, to say the least. That level of professionalism. I suppose working years in this kind of business trains you enough to be able to pull that off without even batting an eye. It certainly doesn't seem to have rubbed off on Isabella, though.
Sorry, could you give me a second? I have to take care of this.
Don't worry about it. I understand. I can wait a few more minutes. Clients, right?
You won't hear anything from me. Priorities, you know? But if you want, you can stay at the parlor in the meantime. I think we have a few refreshments left.
No, thank you. I'm going out with a few friends after this. Isabella's supposed to join us too. But that depends on how she's doing, of course.
All right, this won't be long, I promise.
She throws me an apologetic look before sauntering over to a small group gathered at the entrance. A couple or siblings, and another woman, probably their secretary. Either way, they look no different from the other guests. All three of them primly dressed, albeit in a manner significantly simpler than the others. No frills, no extravagance in any form, except for the giant sapphire necklace that Hana's wearing. But their gestures and movements alone speak volumes of their ingrained lifestyle. In their presence, I do what I can to appear inconspicuous on my side of the foyer. Maybe accepting Miss Cooper's offer would have been a much better choice than standing around awkwardly, gaping at them. All while also attempting to do my best not to listen in on their conversation. Although that one proves more difficult with how enthusiastic the blonde woman is. Her voice easily echoes through the halls with only the 5 of us here. Pretty soon I find myself being drawn into their talk without meaning to.
Tomorrow? First thing in the morning?
First thing in the morning, ma'am.
The mundane talk isn't what catches my attention,
Very
however.
well. We'll have our lawyers prepare everything as soon as possible. Let's make this whole thing easier for everyone, shall we? Just let me know if there's anything you need from me. You know how to contact me, yes?
Got your mobile number saved here already.
Good. It's just a matter of time then.
It's a brief moment, a fleeting shift of my
Monday for
eye.
us, Marianne.
As long as you're positive, we won't be having any problems by that time. You can count on my team.
You worry too much. Let me handle those things. Do be thrilled, though. I imagine it's not every day you get projects like this,
And the instant I turn my gaze on him, I see it.
Oh, I'm certain Mint's ecstatic, Buttercup. Aren't you, Marianne? You know, we could all celebrate this with a few drinks. Why don't we?
You see that black aura hanging out around him? That's because he's terrible.
In fact, there's this really excellent Irish pub I visited a few days ago.
Wow, he's really asking for it. Looming, hovering over his shoulders, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. A dark blur. No, a shadow.
I think I'll pass on that, sir. I have more important matters to attend to.
You heard her, love. She's busy.
What a shame.
It's interesting, we're hearing them from a great distance.
You never let me do anything fun.
But as I try and make sense of it, a heavy feeling descends over my whole body. It happens without warning, forcing me to close my eyes. The sensation creeps to every part of me, crawling under my skin and draining me little by little of any strength. Before I know it, my hand is gripping the nearby door for support. The sudden nausea drowns out their voices and what little sound there is, all except for the whispers and laughter. Judging, mocking, taunting, muffled, inaudible words bearing down on me like a death sentence. They wrap around my neck and limbs, binds tightening with every syllable, every utterance. And with each draw of breath I take, they drag me down slowly, almost painfully, into a bottomless abyss. On and on and on, till the sounds turn into mere distant echoes. Until suddenly it shatters.
Well, what are we waiting for? Are we done here?
His voice rips through the fog like a sharp blade, and my eyes snap open. When I look to them again, it's gone.
You can head back to the car first if you want, Luke. I hope that settles everything, Rose. I don't know what Isabel's problem is, but please make sure she doesn't hurt herself. Anyway, we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Likewise, ma'am.
No shadows or dark clouds. Only amicable smiles and cordial handshakes. The usual pleasantries as Miss Cooper leads them out of the mansion like a graceful hostess. None of the group seems to have noticed it, and even as I force my breathing to calm down, keep my eyes trained on their backs, and wait for something to happen, it doesn't come back. She returns a moment later. Gently, she closes the great doors behind her, but there's a smile on her lips and an extra skip in her step when she walks back to me. Whatever she was discussing with the group has put her in a good mood. Even she appears not to have observed anything odd. Was I just seeing things?
Glad that was over. It's been a long day. I thought for sure we're going to... hey, are you sure you're doing okay? You look a bit green.
Look who's talking, Missy.
It's all good. I'm actually still recovering from a cold. weather's been crazy lately.
That must be it. The weather, this stupid cold, and the friendly warnings I'm too stubborn to listen to. As much as I hate to admit it, Isabella's right. I was, and still am, a little feverish when she visited me at school this morning. The medicine helped, of course, but only some. Although it's not like I can't function, it did get better after lunch, and I was able to go through my schedule like usual. Now? Now I'm not so sure. However, I can't keep acting like I've seen some sort of apparition when it's anything but. I simply must have listened too many times to Isabella last week, and my fever-muddled mind has started to confuse things. If this doesn't let up, I'll just need another visit to my doctor, plain and simple. Though I do hope it won't get worse. We did promise to watch Zachary's film together.
I know what you mean. I've been complaining to Isabel. It doesn't seem to affect her much, though. Must be because she grew up in the tropics. Anyway, shall we? She's probably hanging out with the rest of the catering staff.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised she's there. She eats like 10 hungry men when she isn't feeling well. Lead the way.
With a small nod, she gestures for me to follow. I do so without much thought, finally putting everything into the back of my mind. The entire visit took a whole 24 minutes, and my trip to the mansion, as it turns out, was a useless endeavor. Isabel is no longer there, and she left shortly before I arrived. Or at least that's what the few staff who saw her assumed. None of them know where she went, but I can take a few guesses. There's only a number of places in Luxburn she frequents, and, well, she's never been the complex kind. Doesn't really take a genius to figure it out. Still, it's odd she left on her own. She could have at least waited for Miss Cooper. It would have saved her having to pay for the cab twice today.
And right after she was told to stay put. I mean, who does that? Oh, sod off! You don't own the road!
In the end, all Miss Cooper could give me was a string of apologies for my trouble and a request to let her know when I find Isabella. The whole affair didn't even last long. I probably spent more time traveling back and forth. Soon enough, I'm weaving my way back to downtown Luxburn, worried sick, and on top of that, maybe a little annoyed. Whether at the unexpected turn of events or at Isabella herself, I'd rather not think about it for now. Not when I'm already running late for Zachary's film. Besides, I'm perfectly sure that's where I'll find her. As one would expect, people are already gathered at the movie house when I get to it. The small avenue where it's located has been closed off early from any passing traffic to make way for the avid moviegoers who are sure to crowd the venue. I have to park almost a street away and walk the remaining distance because of it. Looking for them has taken a while, but in a crowd this big, I eventually spot them near the entrance. Thanks to Zachary, mostly. And like I've surmised, Isabella's with him.
I knew it.
Wasting no time, I march over to their little group. Words filled with concern tumble out of my mouth before I can stop myself.
Isabella! Oh, thank goodness! Becca, you're just in time.
An odd expression crosses her face as I hold it with both hands, but I ignore it in favor of getting a good look at her, forcing her to keep still and fix her gaze upon me.
Becca, you're squishing my face.
How are you? Are you all right?
Why wouldn't I be?
There doesn't seem to be any visible injury, nor does she appear to be in pain. Apart from her confused frown at my question, she looks pretty much how she would any other day. Even so, you can't really tell these things with her at first glance. The last time she got sick, she never bothered to call anyone, even me, who lives right next door. If I hadn't checked on her then, she probably would have died on her bed with the rest of us none the wiser. It's one thing we laugh about now, but moments like those also teach you something about a person. If anything, it's given me more reason to constantly worry about her. And the moments a familiar name comes up, I know my concerns right now aren't completely baseless.
Rose called me earlier.
Her expression swiftly changes, and as gently as she can, Isabella pushes my hands away. Yet even before she says anything, I already have a hunch as to how this whole thing will play out.
Oh, no, everything's good. Rose covered for me at work today.
That's not what I'm talking about. How's your head?
And then in there, the whole conversation goes down, as I've imagined. She dodges my hand when I reach for the back of her head, intending to check the injury myself. She even makes a show of hiding behind Zack just to avoid me. Instantly, what's supposed to be a simple inquiry dissolves into a shameless game of tag, shouting and chasing like none of us can be bothered to act like the full-grown adults we're supposed to be. Including Ashton. I wouldn't put it past Isabella, but Ash? Out of everyone. In fact, if that stupid smirk on his face tells me anything, he finds this whole mess amusing. Oh, for the love of...
Isabella, this isn't a laughing matter.
She did look pale when I saw her.
Wow, thanks a lot, Ashton, you traitor. I'll get you back for this, just you wait.
What? I'm just saying it as it is. If you mentioned this earlier, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
There's a moment's pause. My hand stills midair as my attention shifts to Ashton and the words he leaves hanging between the four of us. He doesn't meet my eye, and I don't even think he's aware of what he said. But the meaning in each syllable alone is clear, and they echo. They sting. They burn.
I'm sorry. Saw her?
Yeah, they arrived together. Bella looked fine to me then. I don't know.
Oh, Rebecca Gales, you've got it bad for Ashton, don't you? Of course. Of course! Why else would Isabella leave on her own after being told to stay put? After that little chat about money this morning? Something close to silence falls while I mull over the words. Both what's already been said and what's left unspoken. When I do find my voice, it only reeks with nothing but bitter, unpleasant thoughts. Thoughts I quickly stamp out before they surface. Thoughts I hide the best I can in the deepest parts of my mind, locking it away for no one to see.
Oh, that's good. At least she didn't have to travel alone, right? At least. Good.
Yet try as I might, the green-eyed monster easily rears its ugly head. Like it always does every time his gaze lingers a second longer. Every time he smiles in a manner far too gentle and far too sincere, whenever he thinks no one can see. Every time my mind suggests his words mean more than they should. Every small little thing. Despite what he says. Despite his tone.
Look, you guys.
For all I know, it may just be the same kind of fondness born from friendship. Maybe I'm simply overthinking it like he tells me. Or maybe there really is something there. But in his short display of impatience, I know the whole of it is just for show. After all, growing up together with him didn't teach me nothing about him. For whose sake is it, though, this time? For him? For Zack? For her? Or for me? That I can't tell.
If she says she's okay, then there's nothing we can do about it. It's not like we can stop her either. Besides, she's still acting like the same old Isabella to me, if she can still run around like that.
Why are you taking her side?
I'm not. But if she wants to watch Zack's movie with us, I'm not going to stop her. She's probably the one looking forward to it the most.
Ash, that's... You, of all people, should know...
Tell you what, if I notice something amiss with her, I'll take her to the nearest hospital myself. Is that good enough for you?
My mouth opens, and then snaps shut almost as quickly, forming a thin, hard line instead. I can't respond. Not because there's nothing to say. On the contrary, there's plenty. There's so many things I can use to reason and get him to agree, but because he speaks with such certainty, and with much reassurance, it feels like there isn't even a choice. All I can give is a long, deep breath and a reluctant nod to the face of it. Before I can get a grip of myself and my own weakness, the mood immediately shifts and I'm being tackled into a hug.
Thanks, Becca.
It's always been you with him, isn't it?
Did you say something?
Me? Nothing. Don't mind me.
A lie, obviously. What else can it be? Each and every smile, a tiny effort to keep things the way they were. Or so I tell myself. Little do I know that this is merely a preamble. It starts out quietly and without fanfare, almost amidst friendly jibes and harmless teasing, a scrap of paper flutters harmlessly to the ground. One that looks suspiciously like a cheap Halloween prank, no matter how you look at it. And yet, despite how ludicrous it all is, Isabella stubbornly insists. It's as if our whole life depends on acknowledging the truth in her story. Does she even realize how absurd she sounds right now? Crivens, even my students wouldn't fall for this.
Isabella, aren't you taking this a bit too far?
She doesn't give me time to regret, nor to think over my choice of words. From there it escalates, grows into an argument too petty even for our standards as adults. Before we know it, one after another, harsh, scathing words are being spoken.
It's not a joke! Will you guys listen to me first? I saw something in the house earlier. It stood right in front of me. If I hadn't gotten away, that thing might have...
Right. And in broad daylight, Isabella. Even someone gullible would find the logic in that screwed up.
There's also no way in hell that this supernatural shit is true.
But it's real! What do you think I saw?
A hallucination? A delusion? Didn't you say you fell down some stairs? So maybe Rebecca's right.
It happened after, when I was trying to get away. I almost got stuck in the same room with that thing. We're all in danger. I thought you were my friends. Why don't you believe me?
But someone has to be patient in all this, however much my own has already been frayed earlier. There's no one else. Who else here can deal with someone acting selfishly like a kid? Every other time, it has to be me.
We are, and you know that. But this thing and that thing has got nothing to do with the other. When Rose called earlier, I thought she's just exaggerating. But based on what I'm seeing right now, maybe it's better if we really postpone this for now.
Don't bother.
Just like that, she cuts us off. Slams the door right on our faces while my own temper flares up before I can stop it. Although, it falters briefly on the hard expression on her. When she snatches the blasted paper from Ashton, I hold on to it. Regardless of how upset she appears, soured expression and balled fist, throwing a tantrum is simply unacceptable. For a grown woman, at that! Words form at the tip of my tongue, ready. But before I can open my mouth and let it all out, her feelings, her mistakes be damned, Zachary raises a voice of his own.
Guys!
A warning, underneath the warm and hopeful beat in his voice. We all stop and look to him, and even my own anger subsides a little at his
Why
tone.
don't we all calm down first? I'm sure Isabella has her reasons too. No need to be hard on her. And hey, ain't this supposed to be a happy get-together?
To an outsider, it may sound like a desperate request, but Zachary's always been the one to keep a level head over petty squabbles. This time's no different. He knows what to say, and when he lets it fall, they only ring sharp and true.
We haven't seen each other for months. I'd really love to know what y'all have been up to. I only ever get to talk to Bella over chat. Please.
And as careful as he is with his own tone, it does make me feel ashamed. We're supposed to be here for him, to give what little support we can give, yet here he is trying to keep three stubborn people from outright hashing it out in public. Later we can and will talk about it, of course. There's a proper time and place for it, and at the moment my anger and whatever reprimands it carries no longer matter. Beside me, Ashton appears to have already caught on. The lines of his shoulders ease to something much more relaxed. His expression back to its usual nonchalance. Isabella, however, she stands perfectly still, hands clasping the straps of her bag like a lifeline, eyes trained on some point near her shoes. There's no anger in her face, only an undeniable hurt. But she's never been good at hiding what she thinks. Always the open book, always the one to wear her heart out in the open. And when she looks up, her answer is also as simple.
I'm sorry. Today's not a good day for a movie night out. I think I'll pass. Enjoy, you guys.
Isabella refuses to meet our eyes, Zachary's in particular. And though she smiles, it's hollow and belied by her trembling hands and drooping shoulders. I wait for another outburst from her when she drags in a breath. Anything easier to deal with than her short, wounded glances. Only it doesn't come. Instead, she stumbles back and merely walks off of us.
Isabella, wait!
Zachary and Ashton's voices immediately follow mine. However, the swallow of the afternoon crowd has already swallowed her retreating back, and before our words can reach her. Regardless, if they do, I don't think she'll listen. So exasperating. And here I was thinking earlier how admirable she can be when she acts like her age. All because of one stupid piece of prank she can't let go of. Despite the tense, awkward air, she leaves. None of us speaks or chases after her, even with my own frustration over the matter, even with Ashton's seeming indifference. Until Zachary's sharp exhale slices through the stiff atmosphere and he voices out what we're likely too proud to admit, given our natures.
Really, guys?
She walked out on us, Zachary. Can you believe her?
Yes, I saw. But that ain't the point here. You could have at least humored her, toned down on the teasing for a bit.
He sends Ashton a pointed look at the last one. For a moment, the latter appears about to say something in his defense, but soon drops the idea altogether. He swiftly averts his gaze with a small frown, his hand going to rub the back of his neck in an awkward gesture of comfort for himself. He knows Zachary's right, in more ways than one, and this is the closest we can get to him admitting that he's wrong, but...
You can't just tolerate that. If this is her idea of a joke, I fail to see what's so funny about it. She went overboard, Zachary. And then she goes home all upset, like we're the ones at fault here?
Cut her some slack, please. We're all aware how she felt about the mansion in the first place, yeah?
You don't really believe what's written on that paper, do you?
No, but come on, Ash. You're the detective here. You must have noticed something we didn't.
Hey, Zach, keyword detective. Police? Dealing with supernatural shit isn't in our training manual, if that's what you're trying to get at.
I ain't. All I'm trying to say is, we all have our bad days. Give her the benefit of the doubt, okay?
She was behaving like a child, Zachary.
Ain't we all? Look, let's just hear her out next time, aight? Talk about it properly, preferably without anyone blowing a fuse. She won't be making a big deal out of this if she's in a better mood in the first place. Something else must have ticked her off at work. Just snowballed from there.
Probably not something.
A shadow passes over Ashton's eyes, his eyebrows furrowing, deep in thought, but he tucks it all away before Zach notices, or I can ask about it. Catching that look on him, however brief it is, leaves me unsettled for some reason. It's something I'm not used to seeing in him.
Someone, though.
Oh, so you did do something.
What?
Huh?
No! Why does it have to be me?
You tell me. You used to be so friendly with each other. Now, every time you're in the same room, all you two seem to do is ruffle each other's feathers. What exactly happened, Ash?
Nothing.
All right, and you're a much better cook than Sis.
I didn't do anything. Really. You might be right, though. Something must have happened during the open house. There was a crowd, you know? It could have easily been one of their guests. Anyway, we should stop wasting time here. What's done is done. Let's just head inside. The movie's going to start soon.
Ashton doesn't even wait as he shuffles inside, leaving Zachary and I staring after him. A diversion, if I've ever seen one. Frankly, I don't know what to make of that. Moments like this often blur the lines between those he prefers to keep at a distance and those he's opened up to. Let's make a minor change here to OBS here. Give me your OBS. I need you to do a thing for me. Advanced audio properties. Okay. Oh no, that's not going to work. Alright, never mind. And sometimes it puts the question of how far he's willing to trust his own friends. Sure, his straight face, whenever there's something in his mind, is nothing short of impressive. For people he never bothered to let in, it's typical. No one will care, and that's exactly how he prefers it. He never did quite like the kind who meddles. But those who know him well, those he's allowed to get close, are bound to catch on. Bound to grow concerned regardless of the things he wants to keep to himself. There we go. Stream labels was not up. Needs to be up. And bot's not up. That's the other problem. I was wondering what was going on here. There we go. Much better. Especially with that look on his face earlier.
What's with him? I was just pulling his leg.
Didn't you just get onto him about pulling people's legs?
I'm sure it's just as he says. He would have said something by now if there's anything we should be concerned about. You know how he operates.
All empty reassurances. I don't believe the words myself. In the first place, there shouldn't have been a need to make those excuses for him. But it's obvious there's something that needs to be addressed as soon as I get the chance. And it can't be in the presence of other people, including Zachary.
Oh, all 13 of my locks know exactly how.
Don't hold it against him.
Easy for you to say. He never does that to you guys.
He knows his boundaries. And Belle would have probably hit him with that metal rolling pin she keeps, if he so much as thinks about it.
Actually, I'm almost surprised she hasn't done so yet.
A short pause, then. Like a switch has been turned off. Zachary's jovial mood dies down. It doesn't take long for him to find his voice again, and though the hesitance in it's apparent.
Rebecca? About Bella earlier. Could you...
Don't worry about her. Just enjoy your own movie for now. I'll check on her when I get home. Maybe I could even get the real story out of her.
That'd be great. Thanks. Man, I was really hoping to watch this with all of you.
We'll get another chance. It's not like we won't be seeing each other soon. We're living in the same city, for heaven's sake.
Touché. Anyway, you should head into. Who knows what trouble Ash has gotten in there without us. Somebody should keep him in line.
That's right, somebody.
He's a grown man. He can take care of himself for a few minutes. What about you?
Getting us some snacks. My treat, yeah? We've still got a few minutes to spare before they start. I'll catch up with you both soon.
All right, but don't take too long. Just bottled water for me, if you're planning to get some drinks too.
Right, gotcha.
He gives my shoulder a light tap and then hurries over to the snack bar. Briefly, I allow my gaze to linger past it towards the far end of the street, in the same direction that Isabella took off to earlier. Searching, hoping, expecting she'll simply be standing among the passing crowd. It's all just a bluff. Perhaps there'll also be an apology ready at the tip of her tongue, and a promise to be more responsible with her actions next time. But much as I will it, there's no sign of her. After that little spat, it'll be foolish to even wait at this point. So with a sigh, I finally step inside. It's not the excited chatter that stops me once I'm in the small auditorium. Rather, it's the sheer lack of one. The hall's not completely empty, no. From where I'm standing, I can still spot a couple of heads dotting the seats, some nodding, mostly engaged in cheerful conversation before the film starts. But the absence of a bigger audience and what few murmurs floating in the air only make the room seem a lot larger than it really is.
Surely this can't be all there is from that crowd outside.
They had to close a whole street for this, didn't they? In any case, this is still just the first showing. I'm sure it'll have a bigger turnout for the next one. However, despite these reassurances, a pang of worry still hits me as I stride down the aisle, passing by row after row of empty seats in search of Ash. I don't even want to think about how Zachary would feel after all the effort he put into this. Even if there's any comfort to find here, it's that there'll be less chances of loud interruptions, particularly from theatergoers lacking manners. And the fact that I'll be spending the evening with a friend. And Ashton. A familiar warmth, one I've hovered longer than anything, immediately unfurls in my stomach, in spite of myself, in spite of the reasons I've convinced myself of for being here. Naturally, those are not lies, there never are. I'm here to give what little morale boost I can lend a friend, but I won't deny that Ashton's been part of it too. Sometimes you simply can't say no. Once you realize logic's no longer at play, striking a fair balance with reason becomes harder. Trickier. It's not like I can simply ask myself to stop or forget for a moment, can I? It doesn't work that way. Not after I've gone and loved the same person for 17 years. If only he'd look this way, for once. Even for a short, fleeting second. Then maybe...
Okay, listen. I personally know the guy. He might be able to help. I can easily get in touch with him if you want, so...
I thought we all agree there'd be no work calls tonight. Pay up, Ash. That pizza fund box needs some cash.
All he gives for an answer is a glance and a small smile. Yet it still sends the heat swirling up in my stomach and rising in my cheeks. A feeling I instantly pull the reins on as I take the empty seat next to it. Traitorous little thing, that smile. I don't think he's ever been aware of what it does to any woman who happens to catch sight of it. He wouldn't have thrown it out so casually otherwise. Then again, it's one of the very few things he allows only the people close to him.
Sorry, just a sec, Becca. Hey, I gotta go? If you get this message, just let me know, okay? I'll free up my schedule if you want to check with him. No fees attached. I promise. Bye.
Fees? You're not doing anything illegal, are you?
You know me better than that.
Inspector Abigail?
Yeah. No! I am not losing that bet. Don't count on it.
Oh, come on, Ash. It's not like it's going to put a dent in your paycheck. Which one is it? Officer Carl? Officer Benjamin? The chief?
None of the above. And Chief hates it when I call him. Give it up.
Ash stops for a moment when I hold a hand up at him, the expression on my face, expecting, although a smile threatens to break through at the baffled look spreading on his own. He resembles a lost child like this, and sometimes I forget that we're the same age.
What?
Mobile.
And why?
Evidence. What else? You always preach they don't lie. Put your money where your mouth is. Show.
He blinks once, and then sighs. Rather loudly at that, with every intention to let the whole auditorium know how tedious he finds this little back and forth. Just the same, he raises the gadget up at my face, but before I can even read past a single letter, he swiftly slides it out of view and straight into his pocket.
It's not work. I swear by my badge.
Oh, just admit you didn't want to pay. You're a worse cheapskate than Belle.
Becca, look at me. Tell me, does this face seem like it's lying to you?
Maybe. Here's an idea then. Why don't you find a mirror and answer that yourself?
Pass. I've seen it plenty. It still looks the same. Honestly, it's getting boring.
All right, suit yourself. Just remember, I'm not the one who got caught breaking a deal we all made.
Really, Rebecca, it's not what you're thinking. A friend just needed help with the problem. It's nothing big enough that I'll run off on you two. Don't worry.
It's a sign. Time to end this little banter. As fun as this chat has been, some lines, he simply doesn't allow me to cross regardless of the years that we spent growing up together. Especially with the sort of work he does. Of course, that doesn't mean I haven't tried. I still do from time to time, hoping he'll at least share something more substantial than his routine vague answers. Occasionally, he'll talk about it if we ask, but never in full detail and only stuff we need to know. In case we need to look for his dead body, he joked one time. He doesn't repeat it after a stern look from me, but it doesn't make the whole situation any less frustrating.
Where's the big guy, by the way? He can't be missing from his own premiere.
Food. Is there something you want? I could...
Nah, it's good. He'll know what to get. Frankly, I'm more worried about him. Do you think Zach's gonna be okay with this?
I don't need to follow where he directs his eyes next to know what he's talking about. I've seen it with my own and felt the exact same doubt.
I honestly don't know. I only have a small idea of how these things work. But he put a lot of effort into this. Someone will certainly notice.
He did put a chunk of his savings on it. He was hoping to start a small studio when it takes off. If it takes off.
You doubt him?
No, just... concerned, I guess. As far as I know, the whole fund was initially for the studio. Space, equipment, that kind of stuff. I have no idea what suddenly came over him. He already had enough to start one on his own. Why would he use it for something else?
I'm sure it'll be fine. Zachary knows what he's doing. He had me check the scripts and the research he did before he went through with this. His personal experience with the topic also counts. I think he's onto something here.
He merely lets out another Only, I can't figure out if it's an agreement or meant to be something else. The whole conversation dies down soon after, and a silence falls between us. A strange kind of atmosphere that teeters between tense and uncomfortable, almost to the point of awkward. Between the two of us, this rarely ever happens. We've already gone past this point as children. Yet Ashton can't seem to sit still, discreetly checking his phone every few seconds and glancing back at the entrance when he thinks no one's paying attention. Even when people have started to trickle into the room and some fill the vacant seats. It makes the wait for Zachary all the more longer than it should be. In the thick of it, I find myself grasping for something else to talk about. So, what about you? Let's not pursue the mansion thing, that'll piss him off. Good thing it's not difficult with him. Oh. Was that the right thing to say? It was! We got a positive out of it. Very nice. Alright. Once you know how and what makes Ashton tick, getting him in a conversation doesn't take much effort. Amusing how most people often assume he's hard to approach, when in reality, it's the opposite.
What about you?
What about me?
Don't play coy. We haven't heard anything decent from you. Except for those memes you leave in the chat box every morning.
Hey, they're funny.
To you, maybe. Belle hates them.
No, she doesn't. I know she likes them well enough.
Believe what you will, but that's beside the point. You've been quiet since your promotion last year. Even more so after you got assigned to your current case.
I trail off, letting the silence speak my meaning instead of the words I don't utter. There's no need to voice each of them out. He knows perfectly what I'm trying to get at. He always did. It's evident when his whole demeanor shifts, the carefree air around him gone at once, and his shoulders losing their laid-back slant.
You know I can't talk in detail about that.
Well then, talk about something else. It doesn't have to be any of those things. It could be anything under the sun. It's not so hard.
Rebecca, out of everyone else, you know how this whole thing works. I can't just...
We do worry, you know? Zachary worries. Isabella worries.
I worry. Though his mouth briefly opens, nothing comes out of it except a contemplative frown. I want to tell him more. Drill the idea into his head again and again until he says something. Make him remember this one little thing before he runs off to God knows where doing God knows what. Again. Instead, we fall back into one of those wordless phrases both of us seem to share a lot as of late. Same old song and dance. Ranting might be useless at this point, but I won't take it back. I begin to count the passing seconds, vaguely wishing for Zachary's arrival or the movie's start or something else to concentrate on. But as soon as I think that would be the end of it, he speaks. Hesitant and careful in his choice of words.
The chief found a new attempt to pull a prank on the other week.
Is that even allowed?
Using the police car? No.
And that doesn't bother anyone at all?
Maybe a few. But he's the chief. Chances are he'll probably get swept under the rug. It doesn't really matter. Everyone knows he's harmless when he's like that. Probably just procrastinating on his paperwork. Eventually, he'll also get tired of the new temp. I'll give it a week or so, and... Oh yeah, speaking of the new temp, Inspector Carl.
So, out of the blue, and yet equally mundane. Boring and dull. Nothing remotely special about this attempt at small talk, and yet despite myself, a fond smile still spreads across my face. It feels nothing less than the old days. Back when things were less complicated. Back when it was only the two of us. A lot really has changed in 17 years when you think about it. I've grown out of my shell, for one. Maybe even a little too much from that shy little girl who had someone else defend her from bullies. I mean, who would have thought she'd ever become a teacher after that? And then again, if it weren't for Ash, things might not have changed at all. I suppose it's something I'll always owe him, how he's always stood by me, how he's become that one constant in my life after all these years. And sitting beside him like this again, like how we used to, I wish time would simply stand still.
Rebecca?
His voice immediately snaps me out of my little daydream. I don't even get a short moment to compose myself or berate myself for it. Because when I glance up, I find him peering at me, face too close to mine for comfort. Heat quickly makes its way up my face while I fumble for words to answer him with.
Oh, yeah.
Were you even listening?
Sorry. I just got distracted. The weeks before exams are always the busiest.
You look a bit red in the face, though. You okay? Isabella mentioned you've been sick.
I'm fine, really. Don't listen to her.
Sure?
I'm sure, Ash. I was already feeling well enough this morning. Do you think I'll be able to work if I wasn't? She's just making a bigger deal out of something that's...
The rest of what I'm saying easily dies on my tongue as he places a hand on my forehead. It's only to check my temperature, I'm fully aware of that. But with him this close, eyes searching and curious, I could pretend he loves me the way that I want him to. Pretend I'm the one he sees when a tender look he so rarely spares anyone crosses his face. Pretend it's something he does only for me, even if the truth's far from it.
You don't seem to have any fever, but we can ask Zach if you're not feeling well.
I swat his hand away at once, ignoring how much my own heart clenches at the loss of contact.
Don't! Belle already left. We can't bail out on Zachary now. If another one of us leaves, how do you think he'll feel about that?
I can stay with him?
Don't be ridiculous. It's not going to be the same thing. Besides, I'm really okay now, so leaving is out of the question.
Who's leaving?
I have to suppress my laughter when Ash's expression dissolves into a tiny frown. A whole slew of arguments must have already been at the tip of his tongue. Luckily, Zachary chooses that moment to show up, his sudden arrival preventing whatever this is from escalating into something that can go both ways. A grin is the only answer I can give at the question in the man's eyes.
Becca.
We were just talking about his coworker.
Oh. Is anybody I know in particular? retiring or something?
There's a split-second pause before Ashton answers. When his sour look once again lifts into a small smile, I know it's the moment he decides to abandon the topic altogether. It's not like he can win against me anyway.
It was just a few people being transferred lately.
Usual bureaucracy, huh?
You could say that. Chief's just annoyed at the paperwork.
Zachary, why don't you sit down first before you two start talking about workplace politics of all bloody things?
Right, well then you get the chief who talks like this. Luckily he's not here saying you need to pipe down so that I can watch the movie.
I'd hate to get caught in the middle of it.
Zach gives out a hearty laugh, but quickly moves to take the unoccupied seat on Ashton's other side. If he's ever worried about the less than stellar attendance of his movie, he doesn't show it. In fact, for the better part of the evening, only a cheery mood penetrates the air. Whatever hiccups we previously ran into, the uncalled-for jealousies and petty squabbles and foolish chain letters, they all lay forgotten at the back of our minds. If only all four of us were here. The rest of the evening passes without further event, though we don't stay long after. Some plans were made for after the movie the night before, but they're mostly Isabella's suggestions. With her absent, there isn't much point to it, is there? We'll just have to find some other time, preferably when everyone's in a better frame of mind. Certainly not when the rest of us are exhausted and have things nagging at the backs of our minds, or this emotionally drained. Although we still have a long night ahead of us, and the chances of spending together what little free time we have might grow slim in the next few days, sometimes there are some things you simply can't force. A sentiment we all likely share at the moment, if the silence before we part ways tells us anything. Even Zachary seems reluctant to break it.
Well, it was fun, despite, but really, thanks for staying, you two.
Don't mention it. It's the least we can do.
Nah, I owe you both. Especially you. You sure you don't want payment for all that history checking you did?
Quite sure. Oh, you know what? On second thought, just save it for when you win an award. Treat us someplace nice or something.
I doubt it'll go that far.
Oh, please. Think positive for once.
I hear you, ma'am. I hear you.
Then put some back into it.
It's really too early to say, but here's hoping, I guess. Anyhow, I'm off. Got some new photography gig lined up in the next few days. But just call me anytime you guys want to hang out. Sketch should be easy to free up for some R&R now. How about you, Ash? You coming with?
We both glance his way, though mine probably comes off sharper and more scrutinizing. He hasn't said a word since we left the theater, his eyes completely glued to his phone as soon as the movie ended. Typical. Once he notices, though, a wry smile makes its way onto his face. His apology. And like every other time, it'll suffice.
Oh, yeah. I need to double-check something with the guys at the precinct.
Same way, then. You gonna be fine on your own, Rebecca?
My car's parked just a block away from here. It should be an easy walk. But both of you should get going if you're in a hurry.
Right. Drop us a message when you get home. And that thing with Isabella, too, when you get a chance to see her. See ya.
Yeah, I will. Be careful, you two. Bye.
They leave without a backward glance. But despite my own exhaustion and the strong desire to go home, I remain on the same spot for some seconds, watching them, trying to figure out where to go from here, as if the answer could be found in their retreating backs. If Zachary hasn't mentioned Isabella again, I probably would have forgotten about his request. I would have simply let the anger to subside, until we can pretend like nothing happened. When I finally crossed the street, long after they disappeared behind the evening crowd, I only have one choice in mind. She's not answering, though. I let it ring for another second before making a swipe at the screen to drop the call. I don't bother stopping myself from releasing a loud sigh this time. Long and weary, heavy with frustration in my body today. By this hour, she's probably already back home, and it's very likely she's holed herself up in her apartment, I wouldn't be surprised. She's done that before, very much like a kid throwing a tantrum.
I just don't understand her sometimes.
I don't understand why she can't take a hint, why she doesn't think she's being ridiculous. Why, of all people, we're the one she has to play some dumb Halloween prank on. Granted, Ashton's the one who started it, but she did think it'd be a good idea to go with that story.
It makes you wonder why we're friends, but here we are.
Now I'm left to fix things after her. If I'm going to be honest, not having her around a few hours today was a welcome break. Peace and quiet was the one thing you'll rarely get with her around. Yet the silence and the lack of her presence is nowhere near comforting. It merely lends the air this strange clarity. Every little sound and every single movement all the more palpable. And with it comes the unease. It hasn't really left me since this afternoon. And against everything I wished for today, I find myself yearning for an interruption and dial her number again. As frustrating as today is, I could also use a friendly voice. It rings for a good minute or two, until just when I'm beginning to think that she's not going to answer it, the line picks up.
Belle, hey! Just checking on you. I'm on my way home. Is there something you want me to pick up for you? You probably skipped dinner, didn't you? Don't worry, that diner a block away is still open. Want me to buy you anything from there? Isabella?
A jolt of surprise hits me, and in the resulting panic I accidentally dislodge my mobile from its seat on the dashboard. Soon I'm scrambling blindly for it with my other hand while keeping a steady eye on the road ahead. Though muffled heavily by the surface, a voice still crackles from the loudspeakers before I can put it back. My temper rises.
What's this? Some sort of practical joke? Isabella, if you think this is funny...
My hand stops dead for a moment. I spare the device a brief glance, waiting. Seconds pass. Nothing happens now. Frankly, I'm not sure what I'm expecting, but the lines of my mouth form a frown.
Isabella? Is everything all right over there?
I have to make a conscious effort not to panic right then and there, although my tight hold on the steering wheel tells a different story altogether.
Isabella? Belle? Hey, Belle, what happened?
Only a burst of static answers me. Maybe this lapse is entirely because of exhaustion. It has been a long day, and I haven't fully recovered from last week's bout of the flu, contrary to what I've been telling people. But perhaps had I paid closer attention to it, had I not been so occupied with other thoughts, I probably would have noticed earlier that it never came from my phone, but from somewhere right behind me. Time slows to a crawl. Looking up is a mistake. The first thing I see is a face, a ghastly shade, every inch of it battered and bruised and bloodied. Even in the darkness and the world passing by in a blur of lights outside, I can still make out the wounds. Blood still oozes from it, little trails of crimson running down its face, glistening under what little light there is. But it's the gleam in its eyes that catches mine. The quiet plea, the anguish, desperation in them, more than its hideous features and the awful stench of gore now soaking the air. And try as I might, I can't bring myself to look away, even as its lips contort into a horrific smile. Even as a sharp, harsh note pierces the air and the silence around us. Against everything I've been taught and I've constantly reminded myself, I close my eyes. It's a brief moment, a short, vivid second of muscle memory and instinct completely taking over. And if I didn't allow it, if my hands didn't move or my feet didn't hit the brakes in that exact second, I might have... No. I shake the notion away before I lose myself in it. Right now, it's an ugly line of thought I refuse to venture into. Not when breathing is a struggle, and every ounce of my strength has been totally drained from my body. Most definitely not while the sound of screeching tires still rings in my ears. I'm alive. I'm safe. That's all that matters. But it's not my face that I look for when I finally open my eyes. All gone. I expected stains, little telling marks and creases on the covers to show me where it sat not a second ago. But whatever it is, it left not a single trace. And though courage is a hard thing to gather at this point, I take what little of it remains in me, and I turn toward the back seat. Even then, there's none. Was there really something in there? With how empty it was? I'm beginning to doubt it. This stupid flu again.
I need a long rest after this.
My hands fall uselessly to my sides, numb now from how taut my whip was on the wheel, yet still trembling from the unexpected rush of adrenaline. Against my ears, my heart still pounds an erratic rhythm, and my breathing hasn't slowed down. But the world's already righted itself without waiting for me, and little by little, second after second, I sit here motionless, color beginning to seep back into the world around me. Along with it are the sounds and a voice. No longer as indistinct as it was earlier.
Becca, how do you press this button here? You've already started recording!
Her voice.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Let's see. Hello there. Isabella Santos here. Sorry you missed me. Just leave a message after the beep, and I'll get back to you soon. Thank you. Shut up, Ashton.
I wasn't gonna say anything!
I can hear you thinking about it. Zach, Ashes.
Alright, kids, settle down before you break anything!
The recording's old, made early in our friendship, roughly 3 or 4 years ago. Probably? I can't remember now. I'm more surprised that Isabella kept this when she could have easily replaced it. But then again, little things like this, no matter how imperfect they may seem, are what made her the happiest. A fond smile slips onto my lips before I know it. I allow it to, despite the headache already forming at the sides of my head, every negative thought still swimming around inside. When at last I speak, my tone is as light as it can be.
Hey, Belle. I know you're in there. I'm on my way home. If you need anything, send me a message ASAP. I'll see if I can still get it for you. You've got 15 minutes. And, if there's something you want to talk about, let me know, okay? Bye.
The phone call ends with a faint click and a pensive mood washes over me. With it comes a small truth. Her stay is always meant to be something fleeting. Earn some good money to go home. It's what she said she'd tell herself during her very first year. But now, half a decade later, I'm not sure if she still believes that. Even I'm not sure if I still believe it. And with these ill feelings I carry with me, I'm more inclined to think that there's something in her reasons that has changed along the way. They're merely hunches, but it's something I'd rather not bring up, because I'm almost too afraid of what her answer will be. The silence is a far from pleasant company for the rest of my drive. But it's a respite all the same, from an overactive imagination playing tricks on a flu-addled mind, and from smiles never meant for my eyes. All of them I abandon, if only for a brief moment. It begins innocently enough. Tuesday morning arrives like any other day, bright and clear. Even though it comes with an extra helping of the unusual October weather, I appreciate being able to catch a glimpse of the clear skies lately. After going through a bout of sickness last week, it does something to lift the mood of what would otherwise be a dreary morning. And despite being mostly a creature of habit, I wind up waking up earlier than usual because of it. Still, no earlier than Isabella, it appears. I've assumed that she'd take a day or two off because of what happened to Miss Cooper, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The sound of the morning news drifts from her unit when I walk past on the way to my mailbox. Chances are around this hour she's already dressed and ready to go, just waiting for the next bus to arrive. I've tried following her example before, but I don't think I'll be repeating that.
Really? How can anyone be up before the sun is up?
Oh, please, Rebecca, every single day here. It's a habit she got from home, she said, instilled in her by the kind of life she grew up in. Like clockwork, it's always at 4 a.m., either to help with the chores or prepare her little siblings for school. It surprised me the first time. She just didn't look like someone who could. In the end, I've simply passed it off as one of the many things that anyone will have to get used to around her. Not that I'll ever fully understand. I'm my parents' only child. We weren't well off, but so far we've lived a relatively easy life. I didn't have to think about bills or food for the next day, or paying for any siblings' tuition on top of my own, or supporting a sick father's medication. All I had to worry about were my grades, and if it would gain Mum and Dad's approval, as we'd be having for dinner. When put next to hers, they all pale in comparison. They look less like problems and more like petty issues this way.
Petty issues?
But as unimportant as it all sounds, sometimes its ugly head rears at the most inappropriate moments. And sometimes they come through your mailbox in the form of a fancy-looking letter, pretty ribbons and all. Whoever sent this has spent silly money on the envelope alone. Verging on ridiculous, really. That does seem to be a W in wax. I can already imagine Isabella wrinkling her nose once she sees this, and then she'll complain about unnecessary expenses and rich people problems. I'm almost afraid to touch it myself. As if simply brushing a hand against its crisp surface would be enough to put a crease on it, and it'll be a terrible slight to the sender. But as extravagant as I find this, it really isn't the first time I've received one. Most of the time it's not even from me, so who am I to complain? Either way, no look of surprise crosses my face once I flip the envelope over to see my parents' names written in a neat script.
Nothing new, then.
Mr. Alastair and Mrs. Elisa Gales. Their years in the academe naturally brought with it various connections, people from other fields, arts and science, business, politics, you name it. This one, though, gives off such a personal vibe. Letters like this usually come from old students, people who've grown fond of my parents, and they, in turn, treat like children of their own. I've only met a few of them. Most have moved on to become successful in their chosen careers, and little letters like this are their way of expressing gratitude. It's one thing that Mom and Dad are proud of, rightfully so, and I'm happy for them. But there are times when I wish they'd remember they have a daughter here. The real one. Not that it's of any importance now. It's not like they didn't raise me well and provide for me. They did, and I wouldn't be where I am now if it weren't for their hard work. And like a dutiful child, I do everything I can to give back. Even if it's a small thing as letting them know they've got another mail waiting for them. The phone rings for a good minute before someone answers. Mum, her voice as warm as I remember.
Becca?
Hi, Mum. How's the conference going?
Well enough. Until your dad sprained his ankle.
Oh no, is it bad?
I'm alright. In case anyone in this family cares to listen, I'm alright. Very much alive, darling.
And there you have it. He'll be up and walking in a few weeks, don't worry. We're going to have to extend our stay here until it heals, though. Is something the matter?
Nothing big. Just that this mail arrived for you this morning.
A lie. Thankfully, she doesn't notice. Although, if I'm going to be honest, a small part of me yearns for her to do so and ask me about it. But I put down that idea almost as soon as it surfaces. I shouldn't make them fret. They're busy.
What does it say?
Raise your glasses, give cheers to the good times, blah, blah.
Becca manners. That isn't how I taught you to read.
Sorry. You are cordially... it's an invitation, Mum, for a housewarming party. From, Hannah?
The name rings a bell, though at the moment I can't recall when or how I've heard it. It must be nothing too important if I didn't bother committing it to memory. There are a lot of Hannahs in the world, so who knows?
Hannah.
she also wrote you a note, Mum. It says you used to be her private tutor at the Evans mansion, and that she misses you and would love to see you two again.
It makes my heart clench to read another openly say those words to them. The same ones I want to tell them. I want to see you too. It's been years since we've been together as a family, and if there's one thing that hasn't changed from childhood, it's that Mom and Da are always busy with their respective careers. Out of the country, away on some meeting or symposium, sometimes for months on end. It only grew more frequent with the years until I was old enough to live on my own. I'd like to think that's how I've become independent at such an early age. They've always praised me for that. At times, I wish they didn't.
Evans? Oh, I remember now. Honey, it's Hannah. Hannah Evans. Remember? Bright girl, 2 years older than Becca?
Didn't she get married a few years ago? 7 now, I think. But they grow up so fast, these kids.
Yeah, she invited us to that too. Fonte de Medici. But we missed that one because you had to present your paper in Singapore.
We did send her a note after. Still a shame we couldn't attend, though. What is it about this time?
She sent another invite for a housewarming party. Becca, when is it?
What is going on with Mum's accent here, though? Seriously.
This Friday, Mum.
Oh, that's too bad. We'd love to be there, but Da's not in a condition to go walking around. I guess we'd have to decline again. I really miss that girl.
I could go in your place.
I let it slip, without thinking. Personally, I've never been fond of gatherings, regardless of how simple people make it seem. But if there's one thing I hate hearing, that disappointed note in Mum's voice always rings first. Whether it's directed at me or some other thing doesn't matter.
Are you sure? Don't you have work this Friday?
The event will be in the evening, Mum. It shouldn't take anything away from my schedule. It's all right. The invite's for 2 people. I can bring someone with me so things don't get boring.
I see. Maybe you can also invite Ashton?
Mum, that's a sure no from him. He hates attending parties. But I'll see what I can do. If not, I can always bring Isabella with me. You know her. She won't say no if there's food involved.
Okay, if it's not going to be a big problem for you, I don't see why not. We owe you this one, darling.
No problem, Mum. I'll even say hi to Hannah for you.
Please do. And let her know we'd love to see her once we're back in the city. Leave her our number or something.
I will.
But you know, the 2 of you would have become really good friends. Don't you remember? You met with her once. If my memory serves me right, you...
This, too, I can't recall. It's probably one of those meetings where we only talked a little bit before going our own ways. If she did leave an impression, I'm pretty sure I would have written about it somewhere, or at least recognized her name. As it is, the only few people I remember clearly from that time in my life is Ashton and Mandy. To some extent. Mum must have sensed my confusion because she laughs.
Don't push yourself too hard, darling. Really? It felt like having 2 daughters back then. Sometimes I wish they didn't send her away to boarding school. But, well, you know how often that goes with them. Still, try talking to her while you're there.
We'll see. I'll let you know what happens after.
I'm looking forward to it, darling. Take care of yourself.
Will do. You too, Mum. Bye. Tell Da to be careful next time.
She chuckles then. A hearty one, tender and always light on my ears. She may be a stern teacher, but this is the part of her I love the most. The sound of it still echoes even as our call comes to an abrupt end, bringing with it a memory from so many years ago, when life and responsibilities that accompany adulthood were things that were far from our minds. If given the chance, I'd love to go back to those. I don't dwell on it, though, shaking it all away almost as soon as the memory forms a clear picture in my head. I've always wondered how Isabella can easily pretend everything's normal over a phone call and then bounce back to her usual self immediately afterwards. I've seen her do it plenty of times. For me, it just drains whatever energy I have. And with a whole day of teaching still ahead of me, I can't afford to look exhausted in front of my students. Even for a wee bit, it's never a good example to set. So with another sigh, I put everything at the back of my mind and tread back to my room. The rest of my day awaits. "15 minutes later, I'm heading back out, dressed for the day, car keys in my hand. Ordinarily, I don't stop for anything, and there's never a need to. That's the beauty of this apartment complex. It's quiet, everyone keeps to themselves. No useless platitudes in the morning, no need to wear a smile on your face lest other people are nosy enough to ask. Today, however, the morning broadcast still plays from Isabella's room. My brisk pace slows to a stop and a frown gradually forms in my face.
She hasn't left.
Of course, this isn't unusual. There are times when I've left earlier than she did, like last Friday before their open house. But those days are few and far between. It only happens in the direst of circumstances, though the last part might be a bit of an exaggeration. However, with what's happened in the last few days, maybe today is one. The death of a friend isn't something anyone can just brush off. And for someone like Isabella, Isabella's the kind that gets attached to people easily. With Zachary, Ashton, and I, that's been the case. I can't imagine what she might be going through right now, especially when the woman was someone she owed a lot, despite their training being brief. I'd given her space last night in deference, but perhaps today might be the proper time to check on her.
Whatever. I've still got time anyway.
With light steps, I move closer to her door, hand already poised to knock. Still, I don't do so until I hear her answer me.
Isabella? Belle? Are you in there?
No answer. After a second, I finally knock, lightly, so I don't disturb her in case she's sleeping and merely left the telly running last night. Never mind how she never lets that happen. Ever. A waste of electricity.
I just want to check on you before I leave. Is that okay? Are you going to work today? Belle?
Still nothing.
I'm about to leave. If you want, I can drop you off.
Another round of knocking. Then I'm fishing out a copy of her key from my bag and unlocking the door. She lent it years ago after I complained about the mess and offered my help in cleaning it up. I thought the gesture was completely unnecessary back then. After all, I could always knock. But she never did bother taking them from me, always returning it or turning away from the conversation whenever I insist. At one point, I simply stopped trying to hand it back to her.
Isabella? I'm coming in, all right?
Without waiting for her answer, I push the door open and step inside. Her unit's still a mess. Instant noodle cups on the table, a pile of clothes on the side, papers strewn about everywhere, and an unkempt pad, among other things. This much is a given. Will always be a given. I've been here several times already, and I still wonder how she can function like a human being with a place in this state. However, that's neither here nor there. I'm not sure what I'm expecting, but I'm certainly not finding an empty flat. Granted, she could have left earlier, far earlier than usual, but she never ever leaves without making sure she's unplugged everything. That's something she doesn't forget to do. Man, is it just me, or is there a thing of soup down here underneath, too? Doesn't help that her bathroom appears unused this morning. Another habit, and that can only mean that she hasn't been here since last night? Perhaps even since the morning after Miss Cooper's death? Either idea doesn't sit well with me, what with the news we've been hearing lately.
The authorities are still trying to find the cause of death for all the victims. Early investigation revealed most of them were employed under Briar Realty Corporation at the time of death. Meanwhile, BRC has refused to comment on this.
Gathering my wits, I immediately place a call to her mobile. It rings for a good minute, the sound a comfort in itself, but when another minute rolls by without her answering, you know, voicemail must work differently for them there, because 4 rings, and mine goes straight to voicemail. Well, I'm not a woman prone to panicking, but sudden bouts of temper, maybe? But never panic, despite how I sound when speaking. And when it ultimately goes straight to her voicemail, a sigh is the only thing I let out. The pause doesn't last long, though. In the next moment, my fingers are already moving across the screen in search of two people who might be able to help. It's Ashton numbers I find first, and dial. Call it a habit, but even Isabella thinks he's dependable when the situation calls for it, despite how much they give each other grief. That already says a lot about him. There's Zachary, but around this hour he's probably still sleeping. If he's just had freelance work, then it's very likely he's just gotten himself into bed. He's the last person I want to bother, if anything. The wait doesn't take long. Soon, a click, and then Ashton's voice echoes through the receiver, rough and still heavy with sleep. He never did grow fond of mornings.
Christ, what time is it? What's up?
Not you, apparently.
Good one. Did you call this early just to make that joke? I'm going back to sleep.
No, Ash, hold on. This is important.
Becca, stakeout last night. Make this quick. I've still got a few hours before the chief bothers me.
Sorry, I'll let you go back to sleep after. It's just that... Wait, you were on a stakeout last night?
Did I say that? Shit. Forget I said that. Forget I said anything. Forget we had this conversation.
So, you have no idea?
About what? About what? I also have no idea why we're talking so early in the morning, so there's that.
No, will you stop sleep talking or whatever for a second? Belle didn't come home last night. She's gone.
Who?
Isabella!
Instead of an answer, a brief pause comes after, followed by something blunt and heavy hitting a hard surface and a string of rather colorful curses from it. The moment one of my... I'm just using words here. The moment might have been one of the many things I'll keep to myself and remember fondly in the next few days, if things weren't the way they were. When he picks up again, there's no trace of sleep left in his voice.
Say that again, from the top.
Isabella's gone, Ash. She didn't come home last night. Her flat's empty. She left her telly running. You know she doesn't do that at...
Okay, Becca, stop. Calm down first. You're starting to panic.
I'm not!
You are. Breathe. One person's not going to simply disappear like that. This is Isabella we're talking about. Did you try calling her?
What did you think is the first thing I did? She's not picking up. It went to her voicemail.
How about Zach? Did you check with him?
Not yet. I didn't want to bother him. You know he has trouble sleeping and all that.
All right. I'll go ask Zach. I'll call you back.
No, wait!
He ends the call before I can utter a single word of protest. But for the first time since entering the room, tension has gone from my shoulders and my breathing has eased. The bed creaks as I sink down onto it with a sigh, and the telly still blares the same uninteresting news, and I'm surrounded by clutter. All the same, it feels strangely calm to be here without worry nagging at me. I'll have to apologize to Zachary later for sending Ashton his way this early, but for now, relying on the latter, this isn't the wrong choice. It never will be. That's something I won't ever doubt in him, much like his promises. And true to his words, he calls back only a few minutes later after the last one's ended.
She's with Zach.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. She could have at least sent a message last night.
What are you, her mother?
It's one thing to hear that from Isabella, but from Ashton?
I don't want to hear anything like that from you.
I'm serious. You've got to stop treating her like she's one of your students, Becca. You don't have to keep tabs on her every time. Last I checked, she's only 3 years younger than the two of us. That's almost a decade gap from those kids you're teaching, you know.
Says the person who keeps calling her Scaredy Cat.
That's not related at all. Anyway, I'll go check how she's doing. Don't stress yourself out. You go ahead to work.
Wait, you? Don't you have a precinct to be at? Whatever happened to not treating her like one of my students? Because if anyone's going to ask me, I think you're doing the same thing.
Zach said it's an emergency. Something happened last night.
Emergency?
He didn't put in those exact same words, but it sounded like it.
Ash, What really happened? Is Isabella fine?
She's alright. She's safe. Zach let her stay the night after she... Look, okay. Z-Man wasn't clear about it, but let me handle this. I'll check on her. I'll bring her home.
It sounds like a lie if I've ever heard one. The sort where he omits things so people won't fret. And I'm not sure whether I should be happy that he cares that much to do that. Shouldn't be a need for this between us. We grew up together, didn't we? He knows I'm capable of at least hearing the truth without it gnawing at me for the rest of the day. He knows me better than that. I know him better than that. Frankly, there's plenty of other things to say about this, and despite and after all the trouble we went through, with how things are moving at the moment, only one thought occurs to me. What should we say? I can handle it. He probably doesn't like when we push, right? He likes to be able to take care of things. So let's say sorry for the trouble. Yeah, it went up again. Good. I recognize his concern for what it is. It's not new for him to go out of his way for us, and to be honest, it's what I love about him. As much as I would have loved to take this off his hands, it'll only be selfish of me to insist, considering he knows of my other commitments. To do so feels like I'll be trampling on that kindness that he seldom offers anyone.
Sorry for putting you up to this.
Nah, don't mention it. You've got other things you need to worry about. Take care of those first. This is a small thing.
I still owe you one.
Oh, I can name a few things you can do about that. You know, there's this ice cream shop that opened near the movie house. I could use...
Okay, let's stop right there. That's enough. On second thought, maybe I'll just think about it some other time.
Harsh. We both laugh. The sound of lighter and more comfortable. Like the old days, when a wayward 26-year-old is at the bottom of the list that we need to worry about. This is how we find a common ground. We may not agree on a lot of things, and we may see things the way... What? We may see things the way the other does, but the give and take is something we've learned to get used to over the years. Whenever it's like this, confidence in him is the least I can offer as thanks.
Really? Thanks for this, Ash.
I'll let you know what happened afterwards, I promise. I'll call you later. You have a good day. Bye.
I admit, the way he puts it isn't comforting enough. He can be blunt like that. So many unknown variables and so many words left unsaid. I wish he'd simply lay them all out in the open, because like this, I'm more inclined to think there's an exaggeration on the other's part. If it's from Zachary or Ashton, I don't know. In the end, all I can do is wait, go about my day, and hope for the best. Before leaving, I spare Isabella's room one last glance. Disturbingly quiet now, without her in it. I'll get answers from her later. For now, my concerns are best left here. Alright guys, we've been going for 2 hours. I have no idea if we're halfway through this or not. But I am going to go ahead and call the recording here. This will just be part 1 of chapter 5. We'll do a part 2. But I want to check on some of these settings and see if I can do some more audio balancing. I'll definitely be back with a stream tonight. Maybe even later this afternoon. It just depends on how things turn out. But there's definitely some Friday the 13th that's in tonight. I've been told that I will be punched if I don't play Friday the 13th tonight. And that seems like a good reason to bust out the recording. So I've got a little work to make sure everything works before then. And this has given me an awful lot of footage to look at and make sure that I'm heading in the right direction. So thanks for hanging out. We are going to finish Rebecca's chapter at some point pretty soon. And we'll be knocking out the last 2 chapters sometime this week.